I'm legally insane. And right here are a bunch of Nintendo Switch games. Every single one of these games is an absolute banger. Some of these games you've never heard of before. In fact, I can guarantee that there's at least one or two games in here so good that you will have the strong urge and irresistible desire to pick up a loaded gun, point that gun at your own balls, and blow them right off. I've done it before. Won't be the first time. Won't be the last time. But when you're dealing with the types of games that I'm about to show you right now, be ready. Some of you are going to go through with it. Some of you will only go as far as to pick the gun up and point it at your balls, and you won't go through with it. But others, you will see one or two games in this list, and you will not be able to resist. And for those of you that are able to resist, at the very least, you're going to want to be wearing an adult-sized diaper. Every time I get a new game, I bring it here on the show and I show you guys. So all of these hidden gems, all these amazing games, they're all recent pickups. This is not a top 10 list. This is the games that I've recently picked up. Let's get started. And by the way, today we're drinking some more G Fuel. It's 3 a.m. Macho Man Randy Savage Battletoads G Fuel. Where's my Battletoads G Fuel? Here it is right here. Battletoads G Fuel. We don't drink any other kind of G Fuel around here. If it's not Battletoads G Fuel, I'm not interested. And they don't even sell this stuff anymore, so eventually I'm going to run out. Then I'm really screwed. I'm going to have to go on eBay and spend thousands of dollars getting aftermarket G Fuel. And I'm already bankrupt as is. Oh yeah, that's good G Fuel. First up, we got one of the best games ever made. Many of you have probably heard of this game because it is becoming more and more famous with every day that passes. This is Fight and Rage for the Nintendo Switch. It's also on your PS4, your PS5. But this version is the definitive version. So when this was initially released, it was a limited run game published by Limited Run. So it was a limited run exclusive, but they've re-released it 5 years after its initial release. This is the definitive version where they have added all of the DLC, all of the updates directly on the cart. No download required. 5 years worth of updates. And many will tell you that this is the best beat 'em up ever made. And sure, they're probably right. They're right if they are excluding the real best beat 'em up ever made, King of Dragons for the Super Nintendo, Capcom game. Based on the arcade game, this came out in like 1991, 1992, hell, maybe it was 1993. This is my OG copy. I actually got this used at Microplay. Back in the day, I traded some games in for this. And back then, we bought games blind. I just saw that it was called King of Dragons, so it had an awesome name. And it kind of looked like an RPG. I thought it was an RPG when I bought it. Little did I know that I had just purchased the best beat 'em up ever made. And the only game to even come close, to even be allowed to be said in the same sentence as this game, I will allow Fight and Rage to be said in the same sentence as King of Dragons. This is the only one that will be allowed. And basically this game, they took all of the best formulas from the best beat 'em ups ever made, except for King of Dragons, and they combined all of those tried and true formulas and they put them into Fight and Rage. So for example, they took the parry mechanic, the blocking mechanic from Super Double Dragon, where if you actually want to master the game and become the best player in the game, you're going to have to learn how to do your parries and then your counterattacks. Well, this also has a parry system, a little bit different from Super Double Dragon for the Super Nintendo. And they also took other mechanics from Streets of Rage 4. They took a mismatch of various mechanics and created arguably the best beat 'em up ever made. Now, one thing that is really good about this game is the replayability. That's what it's most famous for. It's not a one and done game. You will be playing it for 100 hours. Especially if you're playing a 2 or 3 player, because this game is actually 3 player. 56 different endings, plenty of different characters. All the characters are unique. There's a 1 versus 1 fighting mode that they added in. Oh yeah, over 20 playable enemies, and they also added in a mode where you can have a CPU partner come in and be your second or your third player. So if you ain't got nobody to play with, because let's face it, beat 'em ups are meant to be played in 2 player or more, 2 to 4 player. Beat 'em ups aren't meant to be 1 player, guys. Stop, okay, sure, they're still fun. They're still fun on single player, but they've always shined right from the beginning as a multiplayer game. They specialize in multiplayer mayhem. That's where the fun shines. And you really haven't truly played a beat 'em up until you've actually played and beaten a beat 'em up on 2 player with co-op, with friends. And so they added a mode where, if you don't have that ability, if you can't do that, you can at least bring in a CPU partner and feel like you're playing multiplayer. I think that's pretty awesome, to be honest. They're thinking outside the box is what they're doing. So endless replayability. Check this one out. And by the way, I was about to purchase this for a lot more than it was originally priced at when Limited Run released it. I was about to purchase the Limited Run version. I was literally browsing eBay, and then shortly after, I think the exact same day, I saw an ad, or maybe I saw it on Amazon or something, but whatever it was, I saw this game pop up as a pre-order. And I said, oh, there's a new version coming out? Like, I was about to drop down $80 and buy the Limited Run version, 80 or more on eBay. And then this one was only $50, brand new, $49.99 Canadian dollars. I was about to drop 80 plus Canadian. So I got this brand new, I pre-ordered it. Second game I recently picked up. This is my most recent pickup of them all, actually. This just arrived a couple days ago. Straight out of Amazon, because that's the only place I could find it. Brand new. Not a cheap game. Spike Chunsoft. This is Anonymous Code. Spike Chunsoft. And what do we know about Spike Chunsoft? If anyone knows the name Spike Chunsoft, you kind of immediately recognize it with 2 things. 1, visual novel games, and 2, rare games. Low print runs on everything they produce. And quality, too. That's the third thing they're known for. Quality. Except I do have one game is complete garbage. Oh, gosh, it hurts my brain even thinking about it. I brought it up in a previous video. Oh, I tried so hard to get through it. Had a really interesting mechanic. It was Re-Prophecy Zero or something. I'll put a picture up on the screen. The visual novel aspect was terrible, but the combat system was very unique. But the combat was almost like an afterthought. The main game was the visual novel. But enough of that. I got this because I've been going on a visual novel binge. And for those of you that think, oh, well, visual novel games suck. Why are you playing visual novel games? I used to say that too. I used to say that myself. I didn't even know what a visual novel was. The very first time I heard what this genre was in 2015, one of my roommates at the time told me that he plays visual novel games, and he asked me, he's like, hey, do you play any visual novel games? Like, what kind of visual novels are you into? I said, what the hell is that? And he described it to me. It's like a book. I said, I don't read books. Get out of here. You shouldn't even be allowed to be my roommate anymore. There's no such thing as a video game that's a book. You might as well, why don't you just read a book? And I hate books. And then many years later, I actually ended up playing a visual novel game. And I enjoyed it. I have it here with me. Really good game. But they didn't advertise it as a visual novel. I went into it blind, not really knowing. And that's the way I like to play games in my old age. Every time I get a game, I go into it blind. Most games. I don't even know what they are. I may have seen some pictures or a trailer at best. I don't look at reviews. This is Doki Doki Literature Club. And I really enjoyed this game. And they advertise it as, what do they call this? A psychological horror experience. It says right at the back. Great game. So that was the very first visual novel game that I played. And then, after that, I played AI Insomnium Files. And this is not categorized as a visual novel. But because there was no combat, it kind of felt like a visual novel to me. So I like to call it a visual novel adventure game. So it reminded me of a visual novel. So, and you may have noticed, Spike Chunsoft. This was my very first Spike Chunsoft experience. And it was such a good experience, even though I had a love-hate relationship in the middle of the game. Beginning was great. Middle was dragged out for too long, but then the end brought it back, and I left with very fond memories. So from there, I graduated to Steins Gate. This is apparently based on an anime. I had no idea. I don't care about the anime. I never even heard of the anime. I only knew this game, and it said Spike Chunsoft. And it's hard as hell to find. Very rare game. I think it's because the people that own it, they don't sell them. And I beat the hell out of this game. I beat the game. I sunk over 40 hours into this. Got every single ending. Very unbelievably good game. The music is absolutely incredible. Certain animes, they'll have certain songs, or certain video games will have certain songs that you will never forget for your entire life. Very memorable music. And that's what this game here has. And from there, I'm now playing Chaos Head Noah as we speak. Really enjoying this. Spike Chunsoft. So from there, that's the reason I got Anonymous Code. This popped up on my radar, and everyone is saying that this is comparable to Steins Gate. This is like the game that you would get after Steins Gate. So I don't really know anything about it other than it is similar to Steins Gate. The story says it follows a young 16-year-old hacker who lost his father, and he comes into possession of a mysterious power he dubs Save and Load. So this is sci-fi, way off into the future. And this Save and Load ability allows him to set save points in time and travel back to them by loading them like a game. However, any saves made after the save he loads are deleted and lost. So he can only have, once he loads a previous save, that's it. No more saves. You got to start from that point on again, I think is what it's saying. George Yang of RPG Site noted that Anonymous Code grabbed his attention in a way that hasn't been seen since Steins Gate. So that was enough for me to pick this up blind. I'm very happy with the purchase, very excited. I'm a big fan of the visual novel genre. Give it a chance, guys. Just give it a chance.
I can do anything I like.
Step through the stage's curtain. Rip off the mask of the wizard who pulls the strings.
All right, next up we've got a very unique game called The Night Witch. Deluxe Edition. Comes with a manual. Oh, and a DLC code. Can't show you that. Oh, no, it doesn't have a manual. It's just a bunch of postcards and a soundtrack. This game is another game that I bought blind. I don't look up reviews before I buy them most of the time. and even if I do look up the review, I'm still going to buy it. I'm the guy who decides if a game is good or bad. Not some other reviewer. I'm the game master. I know if a game is good, and I know if a game is bad. And the other thing is, a lot of bad games can still be good games. Remember that. A lot of these other reviewers, they don't understand the magic and the artistry of bad games. So this game is unique because it's basically a RPG Metroidvania shoot 'em up. Slash bullet hell. More of a bullet hell than a shoot 'em up. So those mechanics, combining these RPG elements with a bullet hell shooter, was enough to say, I'm in. Nobody else has ever done that before. These guys are the first in the world to attempt to cross these two genres into one. The Metroidvania aspect is there. The map is there. You're constantly traveling back and forth, acquiring new abilities, acquiring new spells. You're collecting gold. You're purchasing new items or spells. You're upgrading your armor. You're finding ways to upgrade your health. You're constantly building your spell deck. So how your spells work is as you acquire more spells, you can only equip a certain number of spells at any given time. So you customize your deck. And so there's certain spells that you might not like or want to use. So you're also customizing how you like to play in your own style. But you can change your style at any given time. You can go back and change your spell deck. Or maybe there's a certain boss, certain enemy that you're having trouble beating, so you're going to have to think, okay, what kind of spells do I want? Because the spells, you can have offensive spells and defensive spells. Some of the defensive spells might deflect the bullets temporarily, make you invincible temporarily, and so you got to balance. So, okay, well, what do I need to beat this boss? And it's all going to come down to play style and skill. Maybe if you suck, you're going to need to focus on purely defensive skills because that's the only way you can stay alive. I don't know. Right? Everyone's playthrough is going to be different. But here's the problem that I ran into. So at the very beginning of the game, they give you a taste of how good it is. It blew my mind. Like I practically blew my balls off within the first 5 minutes. Because within the first 5 minutes, you're playing a certain character. You've got like a full deck of spells. You're fully powered. And you're fighting some huge boss. So you get a taste of all these abilities and all these spells you can cast. And I said, holy hell, this game is amazing. I love these RPG elements. I love the fact that I'm playing a shooter, but I feel like I'm casting spells. I feel like I'm a wizard. I feel like I'm actually in an RPG. I don't feel like I'm playing a shooter. It doesn't feel like a bullet hell. I actually felt more like an RPG. But that's only for the first, 5 or 10 minutes, because then you are no longer playing that character anymore, and you become a different character. Without going into detail on the story, and you start at level 1 all over again. So you're no longer a super powerful character. You have to then go through the game and become that super powerful character. So they give you a taste of what you're going to become, and then they bring you right back at the beginning, and you have nothing. And I didn't enjoy that, and I felt like the beginning was very slow. I didn't have any spells, and when I was getting spells, it wasn't very many. And I got bored. And I stopped playing it. I gave it a shot. I'll come back to it eventually. And I'll beat it eventually. But for that reason, I would not necessarily recommend it. It's probably average at best. And I'm sure it gets better. But it starts off real slow. So that was difficult for me. So just be aware of that. Speaking of shooters, I got a pretty good deal on this. This was brand new. I've opened it. This is Riddled Corpses EX, a European exclusive from Red Art Games. It's a European publisher of some sort. And this game, I bought this because I saw it show up on auction. I'd never seen it before in my entire life, never heard of it. I've heard of Red Art Games. I've bought games from them before. They usually have low print runs, and some of the games they make are not very good, you know, very basic indie games. Nothing too special. You know, a lot of what they release is average. And so I looked this one up, and what got me was it's 2-player. So twin stick shooter. I'm not into twin stick shooters, but as soon as you add in 2-player local co-op, I'm in. I don't mind twin stick shooters. In fact, I would prefer a twin stick shooter over a regular shoot 'em up, to be honest. I went in with very low expectations, not really knowing what it was other than it's a twin stick shooter. And I ended up getting hooked. I played it for probably 2 or 3 hours straight. Time flew. I thought I had only been playing for 15 minutes. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this game. Basically, this game triggers something in your brain that just gets you hooked on the game. So how it works is the levels are very difficult. You're constantly dying, but every playthrough, every time you die, you're collecting gold and upgrading your character and purchasing more characters. And you're going to die thousands and thousands of times. So basically, you're going through a non-stop cycle of pain, suffering, and rage because you keep dying. And you get pissed off, but every time you die, you have more money. You say, I'm going to go upgrade my character. I'm going to come back. I'm finally going to beat this friggin' level. And this cycle repeats over and over again. You die, you get pissed off, and you go and collect more gold. And sometimes you don't have enough gold. I got to save up more gold. So then you log in again. I got to keep playing. I got to keep getting more gold. But the level ups never end. The enemies, the game keeps getting more difficult and more difficult. And so it's an endless cycle. I went 3 hours into this cycle. And finally I said I had to turn it off. I couldn't do it anymore. I realized what was happening. I said, no, I cannot do this. Especially on single player. This is on 2-player mode, hell, I'll do it on 2-player mode. I'll sink in 30 hours on 2-player, but I'm not doing it. I see what the game is doing. They're triggering insane people like me that they know this is going to trigger your brain. You're going to get pissed off and you're just never going to stop playing. So I had to turn it off. I have not touched it since. Great game though. It is 60 frames per second. Pixel art style graphics. Definitely recommend it. Regardless, I'm still recommending it. But it's a love-hate relationship with that type of game. Some people love that type of stuff. They're into that stuff. But they're probably only into it because of that never-ending cycle. And they don't know how to break the cycle. I know how to break the cycle. I spent 6 years in prison. You know what kind of mental torture 6 years in prison will do to a man? Number 5, we've got Final Fantasy Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. This is a Final Fantasy RPG music game. And the RPG element of this game is it's not talked about enough. Because it really is an RPG. It's not just a music game. So everyone, when they think about this game, they think about just the music aspect. But if it was just a music game, yeah, it would still be good. Wouldn't be as good as Buster Groove 2 for the PlayStation 1. It'd never be as good as that. No game will ever beat that in terms of music game. But because this has over 100 Final Fantasy songs, I would have bought it regardless. Because previously they had released these games on the Nintendo 3DS handheld consoles only. I've always wanted to try it. And because I've never owned a 3DS, yes, I own 3DS games, but that's only because I'm a legally insane collector. I've never actually owned a 3DS console. But what makes this game extra special is that it's 2-player. And you can actually do 4-player if you play online. Now, I haven't had a chance to do the 2-player or the 4-player yet, but just know that that is available and it will make it that much more fun. You don't need to be good at this game. There are different levels of difficulty. So if you are an expert, you can go on the hardest level. And if you're not an expert, you never have to move down to the hardest level. So you pick whatever skill level matches your abilities and whatever makes it fun for you. But where the game really shines is the RPG aspect to the game. So as you play through the single player campaign, you will unlock more Final Fantasy characters from, you will get characters and music from all the way from Final Fantasy 1 to Final Fantasy 15, including the side games such as Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which had some great music, by the way, as well. But where the game shines is that, yes, while you're playing the music, there's an actual RPG battle happening. And that's the part that gets ignored. So you are building your party, you are leveling up your party just like an RPG. All of your party members have different skills and abilities, and they specialize in different things. So you have your physical attackers, you have your magic attackers, you have your support characters, you have your healers, you have your summoners, and each of them have different abilities that only they can have. So there are special abilities for each of these characters that are from the Final Fantasy series that only they can perform. You can build your party however you want to build your party, although certain levels, they might force you to use a certain character, and certain characters are better to have in your party for certain bosses or certain enemies. Some enemies might be weak against fire attacks, for example. So you dang well better go find yourself a mage that has some fire attacks. I mean, that would help you at least. You don't have to do that, but it would help you. And the other thing that will help you is performing the music parts very well as well. That's how you would do more damage. But your healing characters, you might want to have some healers in when you're fighting a big, long battle, such as a difficult boss battle. You might not be able to beat it without having a healer. So I really like this game. The last game I recently picked up is Disney Classic Collection. This is the newest version, though. Some of you poor suckers got the original version, which only had Aladdin and Lion King. And then later on, they released this version here, which also has the Jungle Book. But more importantly, now they have all versions of these games. So they added the Super Nintendo version in addition to the Sega Genesis version for all of these games. And you get the handheld version of all of these games. And they added in a rewind option. And they didn't even stop there, guys. We're not even done yet. They added in a new mode called the Watch Mode. Watch Mode. And it says skip to any part of the game. So what Watch Mode is you will literally watch the computer play through the entire game, and then you can jump in at any time. So if there's a certain part of the game that you can't beat, or a certain boss that you can't beat, you can just skip to that part. Or more importantly, maybe you just want to watch how the computer passes a certain part. I mean, you can go on YouTube nowadays too, but it's a nice cool feature where you don't even have to go on YouTube. Hey, how do I beat this boss? Let me go watch the computer play and see how they beat the boss. And then you can go and do that same strategy. So they've added in a bunch of features, and especially the Super Nintendo version, because I know everyone says the Sega Genesis Aladdin game is far superior. But I grew up on the Super Nintendo version. I never played the Sega Genesis Aladdin. I know that everyone says it's better, but guess what the first game I played was? That I'm still playing, because I have my save game going on right now. First game I touched was the Super Nintendo Aladdin. Capcom made it. It's a good game. It's underrated. But I'll be the judge. I'll play through both of them, and we'll see if I still say that the Super Nintendo version is highly underrated. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say it's better. I'm going to have to do a full playthrough of both and give them both a fair shot, because I'm probably a little biased on the Super Nintendo version. Super Nintendo being my favorite console, I can at least recognize that I'm going to have some bias in there. But Capcom doesn't make bad games. There's no such thing as a bad Capcom game. Also, they give you a little instruction manual. They didn't cheap out on this game. And this particular version is starting to get a little bit hard to find, because you used to be able to get it brand new for like 20 bucks, I think, at Walmart. I think it started off as 30, then it went down to 20, and now I can't find it anywhere. I got this one on eBay, and guess what happened? The seller, I think the seller forgot to send it to me, because they messaged me like a week after and said, hey, did the game arrive? And I said no. But I'm going on vacation soon, so let's wait another week. I'll come back and I'll tell you, hopefully will have arrived. But I think they forgot, because I don't believe they sent it to me, because they only live a couple cities away. And then when I returned, I said, hey, it still hasn't arrived. And they said, okay, don't worry about it. I'm going to send you another one, and I'm going to send it tracked. And I didn't give negative feedback. I'm very good. I'm a very good eBay buyer, because I'm also a seller. So I'm not going to, and I don't get pissed off. I was very respectful. Hey, don't worry about it. No rush. I even told them, you don't have to send it tracked. It's obvious that you just forgot to send it, and you were trying to cover your tracks, and you were worried that I was going to give you negative feedback. But I'm not. Like, relax. Just send it when you're ready. I've got up to 90 days before I can report it as not arrived to eBay. I'm not in a hurry. Send it. So he was so happy that I was so pleasant to work with, that I wasn't giving him negative feedback, that when he did send it tracked, even though I said, hey, you don't need to do that, it's very expensive, he sent it tracked, and he gave me a free game. This is brand new sealed, although it has shrink wrap on it, so I think it's a reseal. It even has marker written on it. This is Adventure City Hall's Paw Patrol. But he sent this to me for free. So I've got this listed on eBay as we speak. I'm selling it. I felt kind of bad, because I'm selling it, and basically it's worth at least 20 bucks. It's worth more than that, but because it's a reseal, it's really sketchy. It looks like the game is still in there. See, that's the other thing. I don't actually know what's even in here. But if I open it, it's going to lower the value. So I'm selling this, and the seller has probably looked at my account, because he knows that I'm also a seller, and he probably sees that I'm selling the free game that he gave me. So this is basically going to pay for this. It's not like he had to give this game to me. I don't want it anyway. So if he gets upset that I'm selling it, well, what did you expect, buddy? It's Paw Patrol. I don't want it. Is it 2-player? Oh, it's 2-player. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to get to over 9,000 subscribers. On my way to collecting over 9,000 retro video games. I collect all the retro games, and I also collect for the Nintendo Switch. Very underrated console. I love the cartridge aspect, by the way. I'm not into the CDs. I've always been into physical cartridges. And when when Nintendo went from the N64 cartridges over to CDs, I was very disappointed. I understand why they did it. CDs, DVDs are the future. Blu-rays, you can fit way more on the game itself. They're cheaper to produce. I understand why. But for those like myself that grew up in that cartridge era, NES era, where you could hold that piece of plastic in your hand, even though these Nintendo Switch games are tiny, tiny little carts, I still get that nostalgic rush when I pick up that little tiny cart and I put it in the console. There's something magical about putting a cartridge in a console. It's a little different than popping a CD in. And for you younger generation, you probably have the same nostalgia with popping CDs into your Sony PlayStation. And you don't have that nostalgia for the cartridges like I do. And that's fine. It's probably a generational thing, and you probably got to be a little bit, messed up in the head too.